Please welcome Dr. Avashnee Chetty.
So good afternoon. Just check if you can hear me. Yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. This is really exciting. And really, a year ago, I was sitting in the audience. It was 5 days of having joined Safripol. So I'm really excited that I can be here today to share with you our sustainability strategy that we've been working very hard over the past year to put together. And I want to thank Nico for his visionary leadership, Kat Claassen, walking the journey with me and being my bouncing board, and our executive team, our forum, Sustainability Forum at Safripol, and actually the entire Safripol family. Everyone within the company has really embraced sustainability. So we are so excited and we want to engage you. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to share ideas. We want to partner. You know, this is a journey we know we need to walk together with all of you. And we're really happy to have all of you here today in this audience and joining virtually as well. Okay, so I know I'm here to talk about the third topic, Safripol sustainability strategy. But I thought, let us align on what is sustainability? And I think there's a lot of different views depending on who you speak to. The other topic is the linear versus circular economy. I know this topic is topical. You know, I think over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we've had regular webinars within the plastics industry talking about this topic. But let us just align and unpack some of the concepts that is relevant for our industry, and then I'll get to the sustainability strategy. Okay, so sustainability, why should we care? And I think, Michael, you did a very good job in your introduction. I wanted this to be the departure point, because I think when we talk plastics, we think of packaging. And then we think of packaging in the environment, and that comes with all of the negative emotions. But like Michael rightfully pointed out, we wouldn't be here today if it's not for plastics. And we've seen with COVID-19, society has once again turned to plastics for life-saving PPE, but you know, the list goes on. So I think there's been no other material developed to date that is as versatile, as convenient, and as affordable as plastics. So then, you know, the question is, we know about the bad rep that plastics is currently getting in society. So the question is, how exactly did we get here? And I wanted to share this. You don't need to read the text because it's not very visible. But what it says is, this is an article that appeared in Life magazine way back in 1955. And guess what we were actually celebrating? Disposable plastics. It was a breakthrough technology. It was the first time in material development history that we had a material that was so affordable that after buying it, you could just dispose it. You know, and there we were celebrating disposable items, cut down household chores. So, you know, it was a great achievement. So, and now, where are we now? So now we're sitting in a situation where we just have overconsumed this miracle material. You know, and if you look at the picture that appeared in National Geographic, this was in June 2018, we had to choose. It now says plastic or planet. And I couldn't have this slide without showing David Attenborough and the Blue Planet 2. For those of you that have watched it, I'm sure it still resonates with you. And I think these were the iconic moments that modern society has experienced over the past 2 to 3 years. And what Blue Planet 2 really highlighted was the negative impact that plastics is having, not in the industry, but in the marine environment. And I think that's an important distinction. But what was good about Blue Planet 2, it actually galvanized public opinion, and we need that, even though it's harsh for us as an industry to hear it. It actually drives positive consumer behavior. The other thing that we had was it galvanized political will and action for change towards dealing with the plastic pollution problem. I liked this one, and Martin, I thank you for this, because in an earlier discussion, you actually highlighted this. And it says plastic isn't the problem. It's what we do with it. And I think that is a very important reality. You know, and it says that the onus is on us to be smarter, to be far smarter in how we use this miracle material. Okay, so whose responsibility then is it? When we see this precious food contact compliant PET bottle, where we had a lot of resources going to produce that bottle, and it's not just the fossil fuels, it's the utilities, it's the water, the energy, the infrastructure, the people around it. And this bottle lies on the beach. Okay, so the first thing you would say, which is true, it's actually poor waste management practices, and perhaps if we dig deeper, it could be a lack of municipal services. Okay, so in that case, we as the industry say it's actually the responsibility of the consumer, municipalities, and government. And I think rightfully so. If we go further up the value chain, we then say, but actually, it's the producers. It's the producers that put these bottles on our shelves. So then you might argue it's actually the brand owners and retailers. And even further up, you might say, it's poor product design. These bottles are not being designed for circularity. They are not being designed for end of use in mind. And you would be right. Then, if you go further up the value chain, you might think it's actually the polymer type. This is a lightweight material that is going to float if it ends up in the ocean. It's not designed for reuse and recycle. So then it becomes the responsibility of the polymer producer, brand owner, and converter. But then, I'm sure some of you are having this thought, but most of our plastics that we put on the market are recyclable. So it's actually perhaps not us. Okay, so I think the reality is, and we all know it, it's the collective responsibility of the whole value chain. And I think it's a very exciting space to be in because we have such a big value chain as a plastics industry. And the complexity of that is we need to get all of the value chain partners to work together. Okay, so we know we need to move this industry forward towards one that is sustainable, but we need fit-for-purpose technologies that is relevant for South Africa. Okay, that's important. But when we look at sustainability, what is sustainability? And, there's a lot of myths about what sustainability is or isn't. And some of it is that sustainability is about hippies and the tree huggers. So I've been told that as well. Or it's about job losses, economic losses. The other one, sustainability is about recycling. So are these myths or realities? And if you actually look at what is sustainability, it's complex because it's the integration of three critical concepts, the one being economic development. And I think as a plastics industry, we've been very fortunate because this industry contributes towards GDP of South Africa. We've got, 100,000 jobs that we've created. So we are doing really well in terms of economic development, social economic development. The one aspect I must say that has been slow to catch on is the environmental preservation of the environment. And when we talk about preservation of the environment, we're not just speaking plastic pollution. I know that is the visible component. We're speaking about climate change, we're speaking about greenhouse gas emissions, and very importantly, we're speaking about our natural resource use, consumption, responsible consumption and preservation. And I think these topics are perhaps not really discussed in the industry as much as it should. And we need all of these to be sustainable. So if you look at the definition of sustainability, it is not about the environment. Because if we have just one aspect and the others are lacking, we are not sustainable. The trick with sustainability is about ensuring that all of these three aspects are not just existing, but are coexisting in harmony. So sustainability focuses on meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Okay, so what is our roadmap towards getting to a sustainable industry? And I'm sure most of you in the audience are aware of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These are 17 SDGs that have been agreed upon amongst 193 countries. South Africa is a signatory to these SDGs, and you can see there's 17 of these. They've been agreed in 2015 and they are to be achieved in 2030. So we have just 9 years, not even 1 decade. We have 9 years towards achieving these very ambitious goals. And what are these goals? It's about ensuring that we have a better and a more sustainable future for everyone. So it speaks about eradication of poverty, equal opportunities, access to basic human rights, water, energy, industry innovation, sustainable cities, and I think 12 is very pertinent for this industry: responsible consumption and production. And then, of course, climate change. And if you look at 17, I think it's actually the most important one: partnerships for the goals. Without the partnerships, we will not achieve these ambitious goals. And it's been said that companies that are not yet aligning with these 17 SDGs will not be around in the next 50 years. So we need to start having these conversations now. We need to develop our strategic plans now so that we can position our businesses, this whole industry, towards moving in the right direction. So what is the second roadmap? The second one, and this I'm sure you're also very familiar with because it's also very topical, is the Paris Agreement. And this Paris Agreement, you can see South Africa signed it in 2016. So this speaks about climate change. And if you think of climate change, you must think of the global temperature rises, increases that we're experiencing. And 2010 actually tied with 2016 as the hottest year on record. And we are experiencing extreme weather conditions. The impact of climate change is food security, water security. There's health, livelihood implications, and economic development. So if you think about the Paris Agreement, the picture there on the top is what we need to remember. We need, by 2050, to stay below a 2 degrees Celsius rise in global temperature as compared to pre-industrial years. And this is 80, 90 to 1900s. 2 degrees sounds like insignificant, but it's huge when we think of ecosystems and when we think of biodiversity. Even a 0.1 degrees Celsius is critical. It could disrupt ecosystems. So actually, if you think about it, and in addition to that, so how are we going to get there? We actually need to be within 1.5 degrees Celsius global temperature rise, but we need to reduce, and listen to this one, we need to reduce our carbon emissions to net zero by 2050. This target is already been set. South Africa has already signed the agreement, and government now is looking to us as the industry to help South Africa meet this target. And I'm sure when you listen to our President's 2021 State of the Nation address, he spoke to this very topic. He spoke about climate change. He spoke about reduction of greenhouse gases. And he said, we need a plan for a just transition to a low-carbon economy and a climate-resilient society. So, it's very clear that we need to work as an industry. And, the tricky thing, or the opportunity, I think, is that for this to happen, the entire industry needs to work towards to move towards the same direction. You can't have us as a polymer producer being a low-carbon emitter, and down the value chain, that's not happening. It needs to align within the entire value chain. So if we look at where we currently are, or in terms of the previous decades, how have we operated as an industry? And I'm sure you all are very familiar with this concept. We've operated in a linear economy. And it has served this industry well for the past 6 decades. So we can't take that away from the industry. But what we're saying is a model that was very effective, or we were celebrating in 1955, is no longer relevant in 2021. So the linear economy speaks about extracting precious, finite resources. And then we produce products. As consumers, you and I, we use these products, and then we dispose it off as waste. This, we are saying, is not viable, it's not sustainable, and that's based on the throwaway culture. Currently, I would say the industry is more leaning towards the chain economy. We are implementing recycling value chains in the industry. But what you would notice in the chain economy, we're still dependent on fossil fuel resources. We're still generating waste. And majority of the recycling initiatives in the country is downcycling. So, why should we care whether we're downcycling or upcycling, why does it matter? It matters a great deal, because if we are taking value away from our products, we're actually not going to incentivize the recycling industry. So downcycling is where we take a high-value, food-grade compliant PET bottle that has passed all of the stringent food-grade testing. And then we recycle it, but then we produce a fiber that goes into strapping or some low-value application. That is not going to drive the recycling economy forward. We need to keep the value in the material, so we need to be focusing on bottle to bottle, where we are creating value instead of subtracting the value from these products. So where do we ideally want to be? We want to be in the circular economy. And why is that? Because now we start upcycling. But in addition to upcycling, you can see those little loops. We're actually doing more than just recycling. We are reducing, we are reusing. So we're developing reuse, refillable models for our materials. We're keeping our product in the materials loop for as much as possible. And there's no waste. We've now decoupled from our raw material feedstock. And that's ideally closing the loop in the circular economy, and it aligns with the waste hierarchy. We've all heard about the 3 Rs, and there's even the 5 Rs, and recently we heard of the 9 Rs. So all of these concepts says reduce, reuse, and recycle is most preferred. Recovery of energy is not preferred. And why is that? That's because we're taking precious raw materials that we as a value chain have invested in, but we're taking it out of our industry. We're now taking, we put it into the energy or the fuel industry. And by doing that, then we still need to extract more fossil fuel resources. The idea of the circular economy is let's keep our precious resources in our industry. And let's keep it there for maximum use cycles, so we extract maximum utility. Okay, so this is another very popular representation of the circular economy, and it comes from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who are doing excellent work in driving forward the circular economy. And if you look at this, what is it telling us? It is telling us for the plastics industry to be sustainable, the one thing we need to do is to decouple from finite resources. There's always the concern that if we start talking recycling, reuse models, we're going to be reducing the economic value of the plastics industry. And that is not a truth. We're actually going to be creating value, creating more jobs, but not just creating jobs, creating relevant jobs that are sustainable and that will still be relevant by 2050. So how are we going to decouple from finite resources? We are going to ensure that before the material even leaves our factory, we've thought the design through. So we've designed it already with the end of use in mind. We've designed for circularity. And we looked at the suitable end of use options. So what this means is this PET bottle, if you remember the waste hierarchy, did you notice that recycle is only the 3rd preferred option? The first one is reduce unnecessary packaging. The second one is reuse. So before a product actually goes into the recycling stream, it should be designed for multiple use lives. So we should, after one cycle, we should be able to use it again, and multiple times thereafter, up until the point we reach end of use, then that material can be recycled. And obviously, in order to do this, we need to secure consistent, high quality, and high quantity of feedstock. And that is why reducing plastic leakage is critical in ensuring that these value chains are sustainable. And then we recycle. So the other critical component to when we look at this, we've got renewable resourced virgin feedstock. This means we're going to reduce our dependency on fossil fuel finite resources. We're going to replace this with recycled content, and we're going to supplement our raw material flow with renewable feedstocks. And if you think of this country, we have abundant biomass. unfortunately, it's underutilized. So we need to be developing those options and other options that exist for renewable feedstock. And the other option, obviously, for renewable feedstock is if we can now start doing chemical recycling. And the topic after mine is going to speak about that. So we're speaking about circular economy. Is it just us, the plastics industry, that thinks this is important? And the answer is no. This is coming from multiple stakeholders. It's the brand owners that have set these very ambitious targets for themselves. And if you just go down the line, this is for recycled content. We have something like 50% of recycled content by 2030, 100% by 2025. These are very ambitious. And especially for a country like ourselves, the question is, where is this feedstock going to come from? And in addition to the brand owners, we have governments, we have countries that are putting in measures in place to ensure that we ban the import of plastics waste. The picture at the bottom that you see, the ship, is actually the Chinese national sword, which I'm sure you've heard about, when in 2018, China said, enough, we are not accepting the world's waste. And the good thing about that, it has inspired localization of recycling. Countries now had to find an outlet for their own waste. And the EU has actually adopted a circular economy for plastics. And they are putting implementation plans in place to take the EU plastic industry forward. So I think for us, it's not about, is this something we should do? It's about, when do we start? We should have already started. It's obvious that as South Africa, we need to align. We need to see what's happening globally. Where can we learn? Where are the quick wins for the country? But we also don't want to make the mistake of thinking that what's working elsewhere is necessarily going to be suitable for our local context. So it has to be fit for purpose. Okay, so before we look at the strategy, I thought it's prudent that I show this from Albert Einstein, and he says, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And I think that is quite obvious. But unfortunately, sometimes we get stuck in the rut, and we expect a different outcome, but the input remains the same. So I think we at Safripol have challenged ourselves. We said we need to be doing something different. If we are to shift the needle forward, we need new innovations, new technologies, new thinking, and that is what we've done. We've embraced change. And I think we need that in the entire value chain. Okay, so this is basically my talk, because this is the one slide that speaks about the strategy. And in a nutshell, and if you look at the content on this slide, it doesn't come as a surprise, because I think the build-up that I've now shared with you is why we are doing this. The cornerstone of our strategy is, no surprise, the circular economy. And we've identified 4 different focus areas within this specific goal. The first one is advancing recycling. The second one, design for circularity, reducing plastic leakage, and renewable feedstocks. So if you look at that, the targets that we've set for ourselves, or the goals, you'll realize that for us to do this, we actually need our value chain partnerships. For us to do recycling, we are going to need the upstream feedstock, so we need to work with the recyclers. Design for circularity, we also need partnerships with the converters, with the brand owners, etc. Reducing plastic leakage, that's not something that we as Safripol do in terms of our DNA, but we are partnering with like-minded partners to ensure that we tackle this issue. And the same goes for renewable feedstocks. If you look at our second focus area, it speaks about reducing our environmental impact. And this, again, is no surprise. We are highly dependent as an industry on fossil fuel feedstocks. So we are leveraging on our operational excellence to ensure that we are efficient in terms of the critical resources that we use. We're looking at our greenhouse gas emissions, energy, water consumption, and waste generated. And our goal is to transition to a lower carbon economy. Right? And I think lower is very critical, because the target of a net zero is very ambitious, but we need to have incremental wins so that by 2030, we have significant progress, and by 2050, perhaps we will be there. The third area is our socio-economic development, and this speaks to our corporate social development initiatives. And here we are accelerating all of the work that we do with our fence line communities, adjacent communities, within our own business, and with schools. But what I wanted you to notice is we've put partnerships for sustainability as the foundation for this strategy, because that's what it is. If we don't have partnerships, this will be a pipe dream for Safripol for 2025. Okay, so if we look at the first target, or the first focus area, advancing recycling. Okay, so what is it we are doing? And I think we've for a long time, we're known as a virgin polymer producer. But unfortunately, if we don't want to become the next Kodak. So we are transitioning, we're working with our value chain partners, and we want to align in terms of unlocking opportunities in the recycling value chains, but very importantly, that speaks to our strengths as a company. We're a chemical producer. We know how to take a monomer and convert it to a polymer, and we do it very efficiently. So we are leveraging on the polymer expertise that we have as a company, our assets, our operational expertise, so that we can increase the back-end throughput of recycling processes. As you know, Safripol, we produce food-grade compliant PET. We're the only PET producer in South Africa, the biggest in Southern Africa. So I think we've got some value that we can add to what is currently happening in that value stream. But why is it that we want to do it? And the first point speaks to it. There is currently limited capacity in the country for producing post-consumer resin for upcycling applications. And I spoke to this point in the earlier slide, is that if we are not upcycling, we are taking value away from our precious products. So we need to be upcycling. And for Safripol, our expertise lies in the food contact compliant, bottle-to-bottle applications, and that is where we put in a lot of focus. So what we have done, we have technically validated that using our hardware that exists already, we can produce a food contact compliant rPET containing resin. And up to 15% of post-consumer resin content, we actually have validated that we have food contact compliance. We believe we can even get up to 50% depending on the quality of the feedstock. And I think that is also another big concern for this industry. We currently have a huge challenge that sits upstream in the waste collection, in converting that into a consistent, high quality and high quantity supply of feedstock. So my last point there says that we are investigating both chemical and mechanical recycling technologies. I am not going to go into the details of this because AMI is following with their presentations on both mechanical and chemical recycling. But what I want to show is that what we are currently doing in terms of mechanical recycling, we want to produce a one-bag solution. So what this means is that currently, if you look at what is currently happening with mechanical recycling in terms of PET, you would buy a recycled pellet from a recycler. You would buy virgin PET from Safripol, and you will mix it, and then you provide it to your customer. That's conventionally what's happening, and that we call salt and pepper. The value addition that we believe we can bring to the industry is a pellet blend, and we call this a one-bag solution. So we want to take the rPET pellet, but we want to process it together with the virgin pellet in our existing process. So it'll be an in-situ production of this pellet that will then be blended, and we'll be able to give you a consistent, guaranteed rPET content. And we believe that is what is needed for the industry. In terms of chemical recycling, there's various technologies, and the talks that follows me is going to unlock these for us. But we are interested in depolymerization technologies, which is particularly being developed for PET. And with this technology, we will be able to convert the plastic product back into its monomers. So from the PET, we'll be able to get the MEG and the PTA, and those are the monomers that we use in our polymerization facility to produce PET resin. Okay, so what else are we doing? We are, like I said, we are looking at design for circularity, right? And these are some of the topics that are very close to our heart. We are So we are looking for value chain partnerships for the 3 Rs: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And the second point is quite obvious. All of the polymers we produce, PET, HDPE, and polyprop, we know they are recyclable. As a company, we do not support development of any problematic plastics. So those are the things we as a business, we are staying away from. But the fourth point, I think, is very important. We are using science-based tools like life cycle assessments so that we can make informed decisions about the environmental impact of our own products. So when you as the customer comes to us and says, I want to know what the life cycle assessment of this PET bottle is, we'll be able to provide that data so you as a business can make an informed decision. This is critically lacking. It's lacking in South Africa, and we know tomorrow we have the whole morning session that's going to unpack the whole life cycle assessment tool and why it's so important for the plastics industry. The second topic that we are working on is in terms of product design for circularity. And here we are developing a refillable PET resin that is locally produced. So currently, if you look at the refillable PET market, all of the resin that's on the market is being imported. So we are working towards localizing the refillable PET market in terms of the resin production. And you might think, so, why is this important? This is important because when we spoke about the 3 Rs, we said even before we get to recycle, we should be reusing. Okay? And reusing in reality means it goes back into the same application. So this PET bottle, at end of one use, should be able to be refilled. So me as a consumer, I can use it again before I'm now done with it, and then I can put it into the recycling stream. That is the concept of refillable. And by doing that, it's the same resources that goes into producing the bottle that we don't need to repeat in the value chain. Then it's only the transportation for the filling of the packaging. And there's various options, and there's various opportunities for the refillable PET market. We're speaking now about water. CSD is what currently is on the market. But if we just think of how broad and how many other opportunities there are in terms of the refillable model. And the third thing is we also look at our packaging because, we're very cognizant that as a manufacturer, what we put on the market is actually not the resin. It's our customers that takes the resin and then creates more value downstream. We put in packaging on the market. So, we stand against over-packaging of our own products. All of our raw material bulk bags are reused, they are recycled, and we sponsor these bags even for collection facilities. And we even removing color from our packaging materials. And we are already implementing a returnable scheme for our pallets that you see at the bottom. Okay, so these are things that we are already doing it. Okay, so the next topic is the renewable feedstocks. And this, again, should not be a new image for most of you because this picture is used over and over again because it so efficiently depicts the classes of different polymers. So if you look at polymers, where it says conventional polymers, that's where we as Safripol play. Our polymers are fossil fuel-based and non-biodegradable. The opportunity that we believe exists for South Africa in terms of a quick win is in the drop-in technologies. So you might be asking, what is the drop-in technologies? So this is where we have PET, right, which we know currently is fossil fuel-based. And coincidentally, I'm opening, this was not planned. So this bottle, by the way, is a plant-based bottle. But this is still PET. It's 30% plant-based, and coincidentally, the resin that goes into producing this bottle is produced by Safripol. And this is a drop-in technology. So this is where it's the same chemical structure as the fossil fuel polymer, except with the advantage that it comes from a renewable feedstock. And so why should we care about this? We care about this because we are decoupling from fossil feedstocks, and the advantage of this material is that it has the same properties as fossil fuel feedstock. So that means it can be used together with existing fossil fuel PET in recycling streams. So there's no issue in terms of contamination of our recycling streams. Okay, so we are currently producing the bio-PET resin, and only 30% currently is plant-based because it is the MEG that is currently available, that comes from a sugarcane resource, and the PTA is currently still fossil fuel-based. So the other opportunity that we've identified is drop-in technologies for polyethylene. Why polyethylene? Because in South Africa, we actually do not have enough ethylene capacity for running the polyethylene polymerization plants that exist. And this is just because of the technology that we use to produce the ethylene feedstock. So in Safripol's case, we have available capacity of 40 kilotons that is currently underutilized. So what this means is we are actually looking for feedstock so that we can run our plants to its nameplate capacity. And we're investigating both biomass opportunities from second-generation crops, but like sugarcane, but we also have an ear on the carbon capture technologies that will enable us to enter the space of renewable feedstocks. Okay, so in terms of reducing leakage, there's a lot of work that we do. But these kinds of projects are primarily through our partners. So in this case, we have, together with Petco, we've co-sponsored the Bapello Recycling Project in Mpumalanga. And the lady that you see at the bottom is actually Joanna. And this is a lady that, you know, she decided that she is fed up of what's happening in the community in terms of, you know, no jobs for community members. So she decided she's going to start a waste collection facility. With the co-sponsorship, we actually funded her with some of the important equipment that she needed, like the trailer that you see there. And you know, if you just look at the impact of this funding from the time that she received it, which was in 2018, in 2019, you can look in terms of the PET collection, it almost doubled. But what I think is more impressive, if you look at the figure on the bottom right, in terms of the jobs that we created. So this Bapello recycling facility currently is a fully fledged buyback center. And in 2020, it actually employed 31 people. And it started from just 2 in 2018. So that is a significant progress. But what it also tells us is that this project was only successful because it happened at the grassroots. You know, it was Johanna working with the community members who all had this vision for developing the community, and they made this happen. So we're very proud to be associated with Petco on this project with Joanna. The second one that we're also very proud of is the project that we are implementing together with Green Corridors, and this is in KZN. So it's an initiative of the eThekwini municipality as well as Duzi. And what they've done is they've earmarked an area in KZN, that stretches all the way along the beachfront up until Moses Mabhida Stadium. And they're looking at conservation, rehabilitation of that entire area. And this is the Umgeni River and the related estuaries. So here what we've done is, this project has 2 main aspects. The first one is we're establishing a waste collection facility at 3 identified hotspots along the Umgeni River estuaries. And the second one is we are co-funding a beneficiation center. So this center is for the non-recyclables. It's not the recyclables that would go into plastic products. It's for the non-recyclables. And what I want to show you in this picture here in terms of the waste collection, you know, we have this waste boom, and maybe I can use this now. This is actually a litter boom, and it's an HDPE pipe. It's a very simple intervention, but what this technology is actually doing, it's intercepting the waste that is flowing downstream of the river. And all of that waste is then collected, and there's some litter boom operators this is actually waste that was generated within 1 week. And this is huge volumes of waste. It actually was during the time when there was heavy rains in Durban, in October, November. All of this waste would have ended up in the ocean had it not been for this simple, low-cost intervention. The waste is collected, you know, we've got storage facilities, and then the non-recyclables goes to the KwaMashu Beneficiation Center that employs locals. And these guys, you can see, they're actually converting it into pavers. So these are non-recyclables that otherwise would have been destined for landfill. Okay, so there's a lot of work we're doing together with the PROs in terms of reducing leakage, so I'm just going to go over this one very quickly. In terms of reducing our environmental impact, what I wanted to highlight is the significant progress we've made as a company. If you just look at the red footprint to the green footprint, and this is data from 2007 to 2017, so it's a decade of progress. This was the outputs from our Sasolburg plants, so that's HDPE and polyprop, and it was before CUP bought Safripol over, and it was before we were integrated with the PET plant. But there was significant progress made in terms of the important environmental indicators. In terms of where we currently sit, so this looks at our total greenhouse gas emissions, but it includes Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. So when we talk about Scope 2 emissions, we're also looking at the electricity that we actually consume and purchase. So you can see the significant contribution of Scope 2 emissions from our production. And that is currently what we're working on. So how do we actually lower our Scope 2 emissions? We're looking at renewable electricity technologies, and we're looking at PV. So here, we've scoped a plant for our Sasolburg operations, and it's a 9.8 megawatt facility. Currently, we're doing an environmental impact assessment. And we've recently signed up to Operation Clean Sweep. We encourage all of you to do the same. Why is it important? It's because we've taken a pledge that we will have zero pellet, flake, resin loss to the environment. And for this to work, we need the entire value chain to commit. We also develop products, and some of you actually buy these products, the Aspire 84J, that has a lower energy consumption. And this winning energy consumption is not for us as Safripol, it's for the converters. So we can share more details on that. And in terms of socio-economic development, there's a lot of work we do. And a lot of this is on social media because now we actively want to promote because we want partners to be doing the same. Partnerships, you know, I can't stress this enough. Without partnerships, none of this is going to be possible. And, you know, it's a critical component of the SDGs. So we encourage all of our like-minded stakeholders. Let us work together towards achieving these ambitious targets. And then, you know, we spoke about the Let's Plastic Responsibly campaign, and we are now, as a company, quite visible, we believe, in our social media, you know, the communication that we putting out there, TV, billboards, and the transition that we want is, we want ownership in the value chain, and we want everyone to Let's Plastic Responsibly, but we also transitioning towards a consumer-facing brand. Okay, so the take-home message, I think, you know, the first one is very important. We are of the belief that sustainability is no longer a nice-to-have for our industry. It's about us earning back our social license to operate. And, you know, we spoke about our three main goals, and value chain partnerships are critical. So I wanted to just end with this, to say that the future of our industry is up to us. And I'm sure you've seen this over and over, this African proverb, but I had to say it, is that if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. We want to go far, and we want to do that together with our partners. So we hope that you will join us in this adventure, in developing the future and creating the value that we need. Thank you very much.